All right, welcome to the SummitBid YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about why I love and hate the Nikon Z6II. We're going to go over a bunch of the things that I love about this camera for video, and also why I kind of think this camera is underrated for video for the most part. We're also going to go over some things that I do not love about this camera as well in this video. So it's going to be very, very interesting, a little bit of a wild ride, but for those of you out there who, well, like the 5 of you, why I love and hate the Panasonic S1 video and are now watching this video, you may remember that I made that about a year ago, and at the end of the video, due to autofocus problems, and well, it was mostly just autofocus, that was the main reason why I had to get rid of that camera, because I really need autofocus. So we're going to be talking about that, but first I want to jump into talking about the 4K 60 on the Nikon Z6II. So one of the strange things about Nikon Z6II is that the 4K 60 was added in a firmware update like 2.5 months after the camera was released, which is just, I think that was a horrible idea on Nikon's part, because 4K 60 is such a big improvement to the camera. It adds a lot of functionality over what the Z6 was capable of, over what a lot of the competition is capable of as well, since from my experience with the 4K 60, it's very robust. I've been able to shoot for like 50 minutes straight without the camera overheating in 4K 60. And it's strange that they didn't put it in there from the launch, because as you know, when a new camera comes out, they get tons of videos made about them. And to be missing such a huge feature, like one of the main upgrades of this camera over the original Z6, is just weird, and one of the main features it has that makes it compete with the S5 and the R6. I think that was just a huge fail point on Nikon. In some ways, I think they might have done better just waiting to release the Z6II until they had that feature ready. I just think it was silly, because now there's tons of videos out there about the camera, and they're all saying that it's going to shoot 4K 60 in the future, and I think it would be better to have them be able to test it, because it's actually really capable in 4K 60p. But the 4K 60p does bring me to one of the first things that I hate about the Z6II. We're gonna go on a big old rabbit trail here, skipping over to talking about this camera does not shoot log internal. That's a very strange choice on their part. Apparently N-Log, Nikon's log profile, can only be shot in 10-bit. This camera does not shoot 10-bit internal. You have to use an Atomos Ninja V to shoot that, that's a great workflow. I've used it just a little bit. I've used the Atomos a ton. And I mean, it's nice when you can use it, but it definitely makes the camera kind of large. But anyway, to bring it around to talking about JLog, which is a log profile for this camera that was made by someone in the community. It's kind of weird. Nikon has this thing where you can make your own picture profiles for the camera, and he built this log profile that I actually think works pretty well. I'll throw up some graded footage and ungraded footage of the log profile here. Definitely gives you some more shadow detail, and allows you to underexpose a little bit, protect the highlights. It just helps you get a little bit more latitude out of the sensor. And on a recent trip into the mountains, I decided to shoot some 4K 60, and it turns out that for whatever reason, whether it's a glitch with the custom picture profile or whether it's a glitch with JLog specific, it did this horrible glitchy thing where every like 2 to 3 frames, it would be this pure white, like overexposed craziness. I don't even know what was going on, and ruined like 4 shots with the 4K 60. This is something that I've only experienced with this very extremely niche situation, but that has been an experience that was not great for me. The second thing that I absolutely love about this camera is the handling. So, and there's going to be a little nestled thing I hate in the handling department, but before we get to that, I just love the buttons on this camera, where they're located. It's got a thumbstick. That's something I really missed from the well, actually both the EOS R and the A6600, both of them were missing that. It's got the D-pad. I'll go ahead and show you the back of the camera here so you can see all of those fantastic features. And it's also got a really great touchscreen, very sharp touchscreen as well. It really helps when manual focusing or anything like that to have a really sharp touchscreen. It's got a big old viewfinder. It's got this top screen here that works really well for shooting time lapses. You can monitor your exposure without just burning your battery down with running the back LCD or keeping the viewfinder on in the viewfinder. It does have dual card slots as well, and that's a really nice feature. It is slightly annoying that they're two different card types, but there are some advantages for stills to having the XQD card slot, and in that way, I do appreciate that you know, they're giving people those faster readout speeds. But I would have been just fine with two SD cards because you could shoot all of the video internal that this camera is capable of to the SD card, or at least I've been able to do that. I guess maybe the 4K 60 might be a little more reliable to the XQD card. Should probably test that. The handling thing that I don't love is there's no flip screen. Now, here's the weird thing about flip screens. Universally, at least on YouTube anyway, flip screens are widely considered to be virtually required. But I think it's important to notate that within the YouTube community, everyone that makes YouTube videos, or most people that shoot YouTube videos, needs to shoot themselves at one point or another, including myself, I suppose. And that self-selecting group says that the flip screen is an absolute must-have. For me, it's a really would rather have it, but it's okay not to have it. But for those of you out there who are looking at this camera to shoot corporate work or weddings or stuff like that, I do prefer the just standard vari-angle screen. The screen just pops out like this, so you can look at it low, it flips like that, so you can hold the camera up high. It's a very useful way of working with the screen. And it's a lot easier to use a side handle, which is something that I really like for shooting video. All right, so another thing that I love about this camera is the flat picture profile that it shoots internally. So the Nikon flat picture profile is what I would other camera companies have kind of similar things. For Sony, it's HLG, is definitely kind of that. It's not log, but it's flatter, so you have a little bit more latitude and stuff. That's the flat picture profile on the Nikon Z6II, and well, all of Nikons, I suppose. But I really actually find that this picture profile is extremely gradable. It just is easy to grade. The colors are really nice. You don't have to push them as hard. I feel like you get a little bit more range of colors out of it than I did at least out of either 8-bit codec from Canon or from Sony. Now, if we're talking about 10-bit, the Canon R6 does shoot 10-bit log internal, which is probably one of the main things it would hold over the Nikon Z6II's head, is that it shoots 10-bit internal. You have to use an external recorder to get log or 10-bit out of the Z6II. But I think that the flat picture profile is just so usable. It just works so well at giving you a easy to grade, but still gradable image. That balance within these 8-bit run and gun cameras is a hybrid stills cameras is such a hard thing to find. All right, so another little detail about this camera is I really love the cage. There's obviously lots of cages for lots of cameras. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is a reason to buy this camera, but if you do buy the Z6II, the small rig cage for this camera is great. It's got NATO rails built in for a top and side handle, which is excellent. And it's got the cold shoe mount right here, and it's got the tools on the bottom. I honestly feel like the camera maybe even feels better with the cage on than without it. similar to the A6600. I felt a similar way about that camera, just the cage was on the camera from day one. I will notate though that the cage has damaged my Z6II. There's a pretty significant scratch on it, which I've never dealt with that before from a small rig cage. So I definitely think that's kind of a funny detail about the cage, but for the most part, love it for video. Now we're going to get into some of the actual problems, the things that would maybe make me want to sell this camera. And that's actually going to be the manual focus rings on the lenses I have. So for this camera, the lenses I have is this 20mm f1.8 that's on the camera right now. Beautiful lens, love the light transmission, the color. Controls distortion quite well. Well, for a 20mm, you're still going to get edge distortion quite a bit on it, but we've used this lens a lot. I love it. And then this is the 24-70 f4 is the other sort of starter lens that I got for it. Both of these lenses have an issue where if you touch, and I mean touch, the focus ring, it will shut the autofocus off completely and indefinitely until you turn the autofocus back on again. And granted, turning the autofocus back on again is pretty easy. It's pretty easy to do. You can just touch the AF on button on the back of the camera and boom, you've got autofocus back. But, well, you have to press it in and unpress it. It's kind of a weird sort of configuration. But with these lenses, you cannot change the functionality of this in the camera. Now, I don't know if it's intentional. I don't know if it's a glitch with my Z6II maybe, but literally my brother Kemper in here, co-summit bid person that is also here. He has some of the 2.8 glass. I'm actually using it to the 24-70 f2.8 from Nikon, and the Z6II is what you're looking at right now. And with those lenses, the 2.8s, you can go into the menus and you can actually turn the manual focus off so that it only comes on when you switch the lens to manual focus. This is a beautiful way to work because you're not gonna bump the manual focus ring. Also on those lenses, the manual focus ring is in a more normal place at the front of the lens, but since the manual focus rings on this lens in particular, but then also this lens here, they want them to be accessible, they can be customized in stills to do other things. They've kind of put them towards the back of the lens. I guess because it's easier to access, I don't know. And you literally cannot turn it off. And this has actually caused way more shots to be out of focus than the autofocus has. I've probably shot, I don't know, 7 or 8 videos with the Z6II, full completion, lots and lots of shots, worked on some large projects with it as well additionally. And I've had maybe 1 or 2 autofocus issues with the camera. The autofocus is great. So I just want to be able to hold the camera out like this where I can't see the LCD screen and vlog for a second. But since I can't see the LCD screen, I'm just relying on that autofocus. And since a mere breath on the manual focus ring turns autofocus off, I don't actually know that the autofocus is off until I review the shots later. And that's a very real world thing that has caused issues, and it's purely software. That's all it is. It's just that I can't go into the menus. It's literally so specific that the menu item disappears from the menu when you put this lens on, as opposed to when you put on one of the 2.8 lenses. You put the 2.8 lens on, you can turn the manual focus ring off, no problem. It turns on when you switch the lens to manual focus on the focus mode switch, and then you put this lens back on the camera and it disappears. I know I'm talking a lot about this, but these little details with camera systems are sometimes the difference between getting shots and completing videos and being happy and having your gear be trustworthy and missing shots and not being able to trust your equipment. In the end though, this problem is not enough to make me switch systems. My plan is to use this camera, hopefully for the... Well, this is awkward. I'm actually from the future with better hair. I got a haircut since a little while ago when I made this video. And I have switched systems. It's only been a month or two since I shot that. So we're only like a month or two in the future. And I have switched to this camera here, which we will talk about in a different video. But before you click off to that other video to find out what camera was good enough to make me wanna dump my Z6II, I did want to point out that we have not abandoned Nikon at all. Kemper actually is going to be continuing to use Nikon for all of his video work. He is my brother and the other person you'll see on this show, the co-host of our podcast, etc. Also the photographer of this really nice image of Capitol behind me here. He's going to be continuing to use Nikon exclusively. And this here is his Z6II, which will be continuing to shoot many of our videos. I'm filming this right now actually on a Z50. I'll pass this on over to another future version of myself. It's going to be telling you guys about this camera right here and why I switched to it. And yeah, see you on the next adventure. Guess I should probably ask you to subscribe too, right? And like the video. If you like Sony or Nikon, you should like it. I think that's how that works. Or Canon, really. Yeah.